At 67, I never expected to be jolted awake by security alarms at 5 in the morning. I'm Margaret Sullivan, and for 30 years, I've run Sullivan's Family Bakery with my late husband's recipes and my own sweat. That morning, I rushed downstairs in my nightgown to find my daughter-in-law, Kimberly, standing in my kitchen with 3 strangers in suits. Margaret, perfect timing. She smiled with ice in her eyes. I was just showing the investors around. As the new owner, I'm making some changes. New owner? The bakery my husband and I built together was being stolen right from under me. If you've ever felt that gut-wrenching moment when someone you trusted betrays you, then you know exactly how I felt that morning. I'd love to hear where you're watching from today, and if you've ever dealt with family betrayal. Hit that like button if you believe family businesses should stay in trustworthy hands, and subscribe to hear how I fought back against the scheme to steal my husband's legacy. Now, let me take you back to how this all began. Sullivan's Family Bakery wasn't just a business, it was our life's work. Robert and I started it in 1990 with nothing but a small loan, his grandmother's sourdough starter, and dreams bigger than our tiny rented kitchen. We worked 18-hour days for years, perfecting recipes while raising our son Michael. The smell of fresh bread and pastries became the backdrop of our family's story. Every milestone celebration happened around flour-dusted counters and warm ovens. Michael grew up in that bakery. His first steps were taken between the display cases and the register. By 8, he could knead dough almost as well as Robert. By 12, he'd mastered the complex braiding of our signature challah bread. Robert was so sure Michael would take over someday, continuing what we'd built. We never pressured him, but the assumption hung in the air like the scent of vanilla and cinnamon. But children have their own dreams. When Michael announced he wanted to study finance instead of culinary arts, Robert supported him completely. The boy needs to find his own path, he told me, though I saw the disappointment in his eyes. Michael graduated with honors from NYU and landed a job at a prestigious investment firm in Manhattan. He'd come home for holidays, roll up his sleeves, and jump right back into baking with us. But his heart was in the fast-paced world of numbers and deals. 5 years ago, Michael called with excitement in his voice. "Mom, I've met someone special." Her name was Kimberly Davis, a marketing executive he'd met at a business conference. They'd been dating for 3 months, and Michael was already talking about the one. I was happy for him, truly. Robert joked that Michael finally found someone who could match his ambition. When we met Kimberly at Thanksgiving that year, she was charming, polished, and articulate. Her dark hair was always perfectly styled, her clothes expensive but tasteful. She complimented my cooking, asked insightful questions about the bakery, and seemed genuinely interested in our family history. Robert whispered to me that night, "She's a bit city for our boy, but she's sharp as a tack." Their courtship was a whirlwind. 8 months after meeting, they were engaged, and 3 months later, married in a lavish ceremony that made our simple wedding look like a backyard barbecue. I remember feeling slightly uncomfortable with the extravagance, but pushed those thoughts away. This was Michael's happiness, and that's what mattered. After the wedding, Michael's visits home became less frequent. When they did visit, Kimberly would often make comments that felt slightly barbed. "This place has such charm." "So, vintage," she'd say, running a manicured finger across our worn countertops. Or, "Have you considered updating your brand image? These fonts are very 1,990 seconds." Each suggestion came with a smile, but left me feeling somehow inadequate. Robert would squeeze my hand under the table when he sensed my discomfort. "She means well," he'd say later. "City folks just have different ideas." Then Robert's health began to decline. What started as occasional shortness of breath turned into a diagnosis of congestive heart failure. He refused to slow down, insisting on working even as his strength ebbed. "This bakery is my heart," he'd joke, "so if my real one's failing, I better keep this one strong." The joke fell flat as we both recognized the truth beneath it. Michael flew home more often during Robert's illness, but always alone. "Kimberly's swamped at work," he'd explain, though I noticed he seemed relieved by her absence. In Robert's final months, we had precious time together as mother and son, reminiscing and working side by side in the bakery like old times. After Robert passed away 2 years ago, keeping the bakery running became my lifeline through grief. I'd wake at 4 each morning just as we always had, talk to Robert's photo in the kitchen, and begin the day's baking. Our loyal customers became my extended family, checking in on me, making sure I was eating and resting. The business struggled a bit without Robert's business acumen, but we were managing. 6 months ago, Michael called with news. "Mom, Kimberly and I are moving back home. Her company is opening a branch office nearby, and I can work remotely. Plus, we want to help you with the bakery." The offer of help came as both a relief and a surprise. I hadn't realized how exhausted I was until someone offered to share the load. When they arrived, Kimberly immediately took an interest in the bakery's operations, asking to see financial statements, supplier contracts, and marketing materials. Her background in marketing seemed valuable, and Michael assured me her business savvy would help modernize Sullivan's. At first, her suggestions were small. A new logo, an updated website, social media accounts I barely understood but nodded along with. Then came bigger proposals. Changing our traditional recipes to accommodate trendy diets, replacing our cozy, mismatched furniture with sleek, uniform tables, raising prices to reflect our premium positioning. Each time I hesitated, Michael would chime in with support for his wife's ideas. "Mom, Kimberly knows what she's doing. The bakery needs to evolve if it's going to survive these chain stores moving in." A new Panera Bread had opened downtown, and a Starbucks was being built just 2 blocks away. I understood the concern, but something about the pace of change felt wrong. Meanwhile, Michael became increasingly distant. He'd avoid my questions about specific changes, deferring to Kimberly instead. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at his father's photo on the wall, a strange expression on his face I couldn't quite read. When I'd try to talk to him alone, Kimberly would appear as if summoned, steering the conversation back to bakery improvements. The dynamics of our family were shifting beneath my feet, like sand being pulled away by the tide. The bakery that had been my anchor through grief was being transformed into something I barely recognized, and my son, my only child, felt like a stranger in his father's kitchen. I started having trouble sleeping, waking to phantom sounds in the night. Robert's voice in my dreams. "Pay attention, Maggie, something's not right." But each morning, I'd push those fears aside and focus on what I could control. The perfect rise of the sourdough, the delicate layers of the croissants, the happiness on our customers' faces when they bit into something made with love. Until that morning, when the alarm shattered more than just my sleep. The alarm was deafening. In 30 years, it had only gone off twice. Once during a power surge after a thunderstorm, and once when a teenager tried to break in, only to be caught red-handed with his arm in the cookie jar. Literally. But this was different. This was 5 a.m., an hour before I would normally wake up to start the day's baking. I bolted upright in bed, my heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. For a disoriented moment, I thought Robert was beside me, reaching for the phone to call the security company. But his side of the bed was cold and empty, as it had been for 2 years now. "Robert," I whispered automatically, before shaking away the confusion. I grabbed my robe, shoved my feet into slippers, and fumbled for my phone. No alerts from the security company. That was strange. Usually, they called immediately when an alarm was triggered. The stairs creaked under my hurried steps as I made my way down to the bakery kitchen, which occupied the entire first floor of our historic building. The sound grew louder, drilling into my eardrums. At the bottom of the stairs, I punched in the security code on the keypad to silence the alarm, but nothing happened. I tried again. Still blaring. Something was wrong with the system. That's when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Not burglars being scared off by the alarm, but calm, measured conversation. Business talk. I pushed open the swinging door to find 4 people standing around our central island workspace. My daughter-in-law Kimberly in a crisp pantsuit despite the early hour. A tall man with silver temples and an expensive watch. A woman with a tablet and real estate company logo on her blazer. And a younger man clutching a leather portfolio, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Most jarring of all, Michael wasn't among them. The alarm abruptly cut off mid-wail, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the tall man clearing his throat. "Margaret, perfect timing," Kimberly said with that plastic smile that never reached her eyes. "I was just showing the investors around. As the new owner, I'm making some changes." The words hit me like a physical blow. New owner? I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. What are you talking about? I managed to say, acutely aware of my faded nightgown and bed-rumpled hair in contrast to Kimberly's polished appearance. Where's Michael? What's going on? Kimberly's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. These are the representatives from Sunrise Restaurant Group, she said, ignoring my questions. Mr. Davidson is their development director. Miss Peterson handles real estate acquisition, and this is Mr. Torres, their legal consultant. Mr. Davidson stepped forward with an outstretched hand. Mrs. Sullivan, it's a pleasure. We've heard so much about your bakery. The location is absolutely perfect for our new concept. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I looked directly at Kimberly. What concept? What is this about? Where is my son? Before she could answer, I overheard Miss Peterson murmuring to Mr. Torres, "We'll need to gut the place, of course. These vintage fixtures won't work with the modern industrial aesthetic we're planning." Gut the place? I repeated, my voice rising. This is my bakery. You can't gut anything. Kimberly sighed dramatically, as if I was a child having a tantrum. Margaret, please. This is why we scheduled this meeting early, before staff arrives. I was hoping to bring you up to speed privately, but since you're here. She reached into her designer briefcase and pulled out a folder. I am, in fact, the majority owner of Sullivan's now. All completely legal. Michael signed over his inherited shares to me, and we've acquired additional shares through various transactions over the past few months. I shook my head, feeling like I was in some bizarre dream. That's impossible. Robert and I owned this bakery jointly. When he died, it passed to me. Michael doesn't have shares to give you. Kimberly slid a document across the counter toward me. Actually, Robert left 40% of the business to Michael in his will. You own 45%, and the remaining 15% was in a trust that Michael, as trustee, has voted with me. Simple majority rules, Margaret. The legal consultant, Mr. Torres, looked increasingly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting, he suggested quietly. Nonsense, Kimberly replied sharply. Mrs. Sullivan needs to understand the situation. The bakery has been losing money for years. Tax records prove it. These investors are our chance to turn things around, transform this outdated bakery into a modern cafe concept that will thrive. Losing money? I was genuinely confused. We've always been profitable. Not rich, but stable. Kimberly's laugh was like ice cubes clinking in a glass. Margaret, with all due respect, you've been looking at doctored books. Robert was too proud to tell you how bad things were getting. Michael discovered the truth when he started helping with the finances. The room seemed to spin around me. I reached for my phone. I'm calling Michael right now. He's out of town on business, Kimberly said smoothly. But he's fully aware and supportive of everything happening here. I dialed anyway, my fingers trembling. Straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. The real estate agent cleared her throat. Perhaps we should give Mrs. Sullivan some privacy. We can continue this discussion another time. Kimberly looked annoyed but nodded. Fine. We'll reconvene tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp. As the investors filed out, murmuring awkward goodbyes, I noticed the security keypad by the door. A new one, installed just last week by Kimberly's trusted contractor. The alarm that woke me hadn't been a malfunction or a break-in. It had been deliberate. Once we were alone, Kimberly's professional veneer cracked slightly. This would have been easier if you'd stayed upstairs until they left. You triggered the alarm on purpose, I said, the realization dawning. To humiliate me. To show up in my nightgown in front of strangers. She shrugged. I needed to demonstrate who's in charge now. The investors were getting cold feet about pushing out the beloved local baker. This showed them I can handle the transition, however messy it gets. You can't do this, I said, my voice stronger now. Anger replacing shock. This is my life's work. Mine and Robert's. It's just business, Margaret. Her tone was almost bored now. Look, I'm not completely heartless. You can stay on as head baker if you want. Your recipes, your schedule, just no decision-making power. Or you can take a generous severance package and retire. Your choice. But I need your answer by the end of the week. With that, she gathered her things and walked toward the door. Oh, and Margaret? Don't bother calling those loyal employees of yours yet. I've already informed them that the bakery will be closed today for a family meeting. Take the day to think about your options." After she left, I stood in the kitchen Robert and I had designed together, looking at the worn spots on the floor where we'd stood for thousands of hours, creating the pastries and breads that had fed this community for 3 decades. The idea that our son had participated in this betrayal was almost too painful to comprehend. I picked up my phone again and dialed the one person I knew would help me make sense of this nightmare. Janet Peterson had been my friend since college and happened to be a retired corporate attorney. Though she'd stepped back from practice 5 years ago to travel and spend time with her grandchildren, her mind was still razor sharp. When I called at 6:15 a.m., nearly in tears, she didn't hesitate. "I'll put on a pot of coffee," she said. "Come over now." Janet lived in a neat brick home 3 blocks from the bakery. By the time I arrived, properly dressed but still shaking, she had coffee brewing and her reading glasses perched on her nose, ready for battle. "Tell me everything," she said. "Don't leave out any details, no matter how small." For the next hour, I poured out the entire story while Janet took meticulous notes. When I finished, she sat back and removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Let me see those documents Kimberly showed you," she said. I spread the folder contents across her dining room table. Janet examined each page carefully, occasionally mumbling legal terminology under her breath. "Margaret, some of this looks legitimate, but there are irregularities. This signature here," she pointed to a document transferring shares, "doesn't quite match Robert's signature on his will, and the dates are concerning. Did you sign anything for Michael in the past few months? Anything at all?" I thought hard. "Yes, some tax documents. He said they were routine filings that needed both our signatures since we were co-owners after Robert's death. And something about updating the bakery's incorporation papers after a change in state business law." Janet's expression darkened. "I need to make some calls. My colleague Evelyn specializes in forensic document analysis, and we should speak to whoever handled Robert's will." While Janet made calls from her home office, memories began flooding back. Michael bringing paperwork to the bakery during rush hours when I was too busy to read anything carefully. "Just routine stuff, Mom. Dad would have handled it, but now it falls to us." Me, trusting my son implicitly, signing where he pointed. After all, he was the finance expert in the family now. Janet returned looking grim. "Margaret, I think we need to check Robert's office at home. There might be evidence there of the original documents." Robert's office had remained largely untouched since his death. I couldn't bear to clear it out, telling myself I needed to preserve his business records. In truth, it was just too painful. Now, as Janet and I sorted through filing cabinets and desk drawers, I was grateful for my procrastination. "Robert was always so meticulous with paperwork," I said, pulling out neatly labeled folders. "He kept copies of everything." Janet nodded, scanning through a thick binder. "That's what might save us here, if we can find the originals." 3 hours later, we had our smoking gun. In a locked drawer of Robert's desk, we found a sealed envelope labeled "Business Succession, Original Copies. Margaret, open only in case of emergency." Inside were the true versions of the documents that had been altered. Robert's will leaving 85% of the bakery to me and only 15% to Michael. Incorporation papers clearly stating I had final decision-making authority, and a letter to me. "My dearest Margaret," the letter began in Robert's careful handwriting. "If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I've had concerns about Michael's financial decisions lately and his influence from Kimberly. I've arranged for the bakery to remain primarily in your hands because I know you'll protect what we've built. The enclosed documents are the only valid versions. Anything else has been altered. I'm sorry if this comes as a shock. I hope I'm wrong about my suspicions, but I've learned to trust my instincts in business. All my love, Robert." Tears blurred my vision as Janet gently took the letter from my trembling hands. "There's more, Margaret," she said quietly, holding up a USB drive that had been taped to the back of the letter. "We should see what's on this." The drive contained security footage from the bakery, date-stamped 3 weeks after Robert's funeral. It showed Michael and Kimberly entering Robert's office late at night. For 2 hours, they searched through files, taking photos of documents with their phones. Most damning of all was a clear shot of Michael practicing Robert's signature repeatedly on a notepad. He was forging his father's signature, I whispered, feeling physically ill, on documents dated before Robert died. Just then, my phone rang. Michael. After 12 ignored calls, he was finally responding. Mom? What's going on? I have like a dozen missed calls from you. He sounded annoyed, not concerned. Where are you, Michael? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Chicago. Business trip. Why? Really? Because Kimberly is at the bakery right now, showing it off to restaurant investors, claiming she's the new owner. Care to explain that? A long pause. Then, Mom, it's complicated. The bakery's been struggling. You know that. No, Michael. I don't know that. Because it's not true. Another pause. Dad hid the problems from you. He didn't want you to worry. Stop lying to me. My voice broke. I found Dad's letter. I found the security footage of you and Kimberly in his office after the funeral. I know what you did. The line went so silent I thought he'd hung up. Finally, his voice came back, smaller somehow. Kimberly said it was the only way. We're in trouble, Mom. I owe people money. A lot of money. What are you talking about? He took a shaky breath. I made some bad investments, then tried to recover with gambling. Kimberly found out and threatened to leave me unless I found a way to pay it all back. She said the bakery was the answer, that we could sell it to developers for enough to clear my debts and start fresh. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. So you decided to steal your father's legacy? The business we built for you? I didn't see another way out. Kimberly said you'd never agree to sell, that you were too emotional about the place. She said we could make it seem like it was losing money, convince you to retire. Janet, who had been listening intently, motioned for me to put the phone on speaker. Michael, this is Janet Peterson. I need you to understand something clearly. What you and Kimberly have done constitutes fraud, forgery, and possibly elder abuse. These are serious criminal charges. Elder abuse? Michael sounded genuinely shocked. Mom's not elderly, and I'd never abuse her. Taking advantage of a recently widowed woman in her 60s by manipulating her into signing documents she didn't understand? A court would absolutely consider that elder abuse, Janet said firmly. Silence again. Then, what happens now? I looked at Janet, who nodded encouragingly. That depends on you, Michael. I want the truth. All of it. How deep are you in debt? What exactly was Kimberly planning to do with the bakery? What followed was a painful confession. Michael had lost over $300,000 gambling, mostly on sports betting that had spiraled out of control. Kimberly had discovered his secret when bill collectors started calling. Her ultimatum was simple. Fix the financial problem, or the marriage was over. The restaurant investors weren't planning a cafe at all. They were commercial developers looking to tear down the entire historic building and construct luxury condominiums. Kimberly had been negotiating with them for months, promising she could deliver the property without complications. She doesn't care about the bakery, Mom. She never did. She called it a quaint little hobby business when I wasn't around. The final twist of the knife was learning that Kimberly had a history of similar schemes. Before meeting Michael, she'd been involved in 2 failed business ventures where investors claimed they'd been misled about ownership stakes. She'd avoided legal consequences both times through settlements with confidentiality agreements. I'm so sorry, Mom, Michael's voice cracked. I was desperate and weak, and I betrayed you and Dad. I don't expect you to forgive me. I closed my eyes, visualizing Robert's face. What would he do in this situation? The answer came immediately. Protect the bakery, but don't give up on our son. I haven't decided about forgiveness yet, Michael, I said truthfully. But I do know this. We're going to fix what you broke. Starting now. After the call with Michael, I felt hollowed out. Janet insisted I stay at her house that night. You shouldn't be alone, she said, setting up her guest room. I didn't argue. The thought of returning to my empty house above the bakery, so close to where this betrayal had unfolded, was unbearable. That evening, I sat on Janet's porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold that would have inspired Robert to create a new pastry glaze. My phone buzzed with concerned messages from bakery employees wondering why we were closed. I couldn't bring myself to respond yet. "What am I going to do, Janet?" I whispered, though she had gone inside to prepare dinner. How do I even begin to fight this? The weight of everything crashed down on me all at once. I had lost Robert, and now, in a way, I had lost Michael too. The bakery that had been my anchor through grief might still be stolen away. For the first time since Robert's funeral, I allowed myself to completely break down, sobbing until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. Morning brought no relief. I woke disoriented in Janet's guest room, momentarily confused about why I wasn't in my kitchen starting the day's baking. Then reality crashed back. I checked my phone to find dozens of missed calls and messages, including several from Alice, our elderly cashier who had been with us for 20 years. The local number appearing most frequently belonged to Thomas, our assistant baker who had worked alongside Robert and me for 15 years. Even Deborah, our newer manager, who joined us 5 years ago, had called repeatedly. Janet found me sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. "You should call them," she said gently, setting down a cup of tea. "They deserve to know what's happening." "I'm ashamed," I admitted. "I let this happen right under my nose." "No," Janet's voice was firm. "You trusted your son. That's not a failure, Margaret. That's being a mother." An hour later, Alice, Thomas, and Deborah were seated in Janet's living room, their expressions a mix of shock, outrage, and determination as I explained everything. Alice, at 70, was tiny but fierce, her silver hair cut in a practical bob. "That little witch," she muttered when I described Kimberly's scheme. I never trusted her, always looking at our operation like she was calculating its value rather than appreciating its heart. Thomas, a bear of a man with flour perpetually under his fingernails despite frequent washing, shook his head sadly. "Robert would be heartbroken about Michael, but not surprised about you fighting back, Margaret. He always said you were the backbone of Sullivan's." Deborah, the youngest at 50 but with wisdom beyond her years, was already thinking practically. "What's our next move? We need a plan." Before I could answer, my phone pinged with a news alert from the local paper's website. The headline made my stomach drop. "Sullivan's Family Bakery announces modernization plan under new management." The article quoted owner Kimberly Sullivan discussing her vision to transform the struggling but beloved local bakery into a modern artisanal experience. There was a brief mention of original founder Margaret Sullivan remaining involved in an advisory capacity, but no acknowledgement of the 30 years I'd devoted to building the business. The comments section was already filling with mixed reactions from community members, some excited about the changes, others concerned about losing the bakery they knew and loved. "She's moving fast," Janet observed, "trying to establish herself publicly before you can contest anything." That afternoon, while we were still strategizing, Thomas received a text from one of our regular customers who had stopped by the bakery, finding it unexpectedly open. Kimberly had brought in temporary staff and was serving a limited menu of items that looked nothing like our traditional offerings. "Avocado toast and charcoal lattes," the customer reported with confusion. "And everything's twice the price." "She can't do that," I exclaimed. "Those people aren't trained in our kitchen." "Actually, she can," Janet explained grimly. "Until we legally challenge the ownership transfer, she has the apparent authority to operate the business." Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Michael called. Kimberly had discovered his conversation with me and was threatening not only divorce, but to implicate him fully in the fraud if he didn't back her story completely. I felt utterly defeated. "Maybe I should just take the severance package," I said quietly after hanging up. "At least then Michael wouldn't face charges." "Margaret Sullivan." Alice's voice was sharp enough to make everyone jump. "I did not work alongside you and Robert for 20 years to watch you surrender to that manipulative climber. Robert would never give up, and neither should you." Her words struck a chord. I straightened my shoulders. "You're right. This isn't just about me or even Michael. It's about Robert's legacy and everything we built together." That's when Janet introduced us to her nephew Frank, a forensic accountant she had quietly called that morning. Frank, a serious young man with kind eyes behind thick glasses, specialized in uncovering financial fraud. If there's evidence of doctored books or falsified financial statements, I'll find it, he promised. Especially if they've been claiming the bakery is losing money when it isn't. With renewed determination, our small resistance formed a plan. Frank would investigate the financial records. Janet would prepare legal countermeasures. Thomas, Alice, and Deborah would gather statements from loyal customers and vendors about the bakery's reputation and standard practices. And I would search for any additional evidence Robert might have left behind. As everyone departed with their assignments, Deborah hung back. "Margaret, there's something else you should know. Several longtime customers came by my house when they found the bakery closed yesterday. They're worried about you. This place means a lot to people, more than just pastries and bread." Her words reminded me of something crucial. We weren't fighting alone. Sullivan's was part of the community's fabric. People had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and weddings with our cakes. They'd started their mornings with our muffins and coffee for decades. There was power in those connections. If only we could mobilize it. For the first time since that alarm had jolted me awake, I felt a glimmer of hope. We might be at rock bottom, but with these people beside me, I could start climbing back up. If you've ever had that moment when it feels like everything is falling apart, you know exactly how I felt. But sometimes your greatest strength comes from the people around you who refuse to let you give up. I'd love to know if you've ever had friends stand by you during your darkest moments. Let me know in the comments below. Now, let me tell you about the unexpected piece of evidence that changed everything. That evening, I finally returned home to the apartment above the bakery. Though it felt strange knowing Kimberly had been operating downstairs with her temporary staff, I needed to be in the space Robert and I had shared. Somewhere in these walls was the key to reclaiming what was rightfully ours. As I moved through our living room, memories flooded back. Robert sitting in his favorite armchair, glasses perched on his nose, reviewing supplier invoices. Robert by the window, watching snow fall while describing a new winter-themed pastry he'd dreamed up. Robert teasing me about my squirrel tendencies, as he called them, my habit of tucking away important items in unusual places for safekeeping, often forgetting where I'd put them. Wait. Robert had his own version of my squirrel habit, didn't he? "If something's really important, Maggie," he'd told me once, "keep it where only you would think to look." I sat down hard on the sofa as a specific memory crystallized. Our 25th anniversary, 7 years ago. Robert giving me a beautiful silver locket. Inside, instead of photos, was a tiny key. When I asked what it opened, he'd smiled mysteriously. "Someday you might need to open something important. If that day comes, you'll remember this key." I'd worn the locket for nearly a year before tucking it into my jewelry box, assuming it was one of Robert's romantic gestures that didn't actually have a practical purpose. But what if it did? I raced to our bedroom and fumbled through my jewelry box until I found the locket. The tiny key was still inside. But what did it open? For the next hour, I moved methodically through our apartment, trying the key in every lock I could find. File cabinets, desk drawers, even the antique writing desk that had belonged to Robert's grandmother. Nothing fit. Exhausted, I collapsed onto our bed, clutching a framed photo of Robert and me on our 30th anniversary, standing proudly in front of the bakery. We looked so happy, his arm around my waist, my head on his shoulder. Behind us, the bakery's wooden sign gleamed in the sun, the carved Sullivan's Family Bakery lettering highlighted with gold paint that Robert touched up every spring. The sign. Something clicked in my memory. The week after that photo was taken, Robert had taken down the sign for its annual touch-up. But that year, he'd spent 2 full weekends on it, working in the garage, saying he wanted to reinforce the backing. He'd been oddly secretive about it, shooing me away when I'd tried to bring him lemonade. When he rehung it, he'd said something unusual. "This sign will always watch over Sullivan's, Maggie, just like I will." Could it be? I hurried downstairs to the bakery's front entrance. Thankfully, Kimberly and her temporary staff were gone for the day. I dragged a stepladder from the storage closet and positioned it under the sign that hung above the entrance. Standing on tiptoe on the highest step, I ran my fingers along the top edge of the wooden sign. There, almost invisible unless you were looking for it, was a small keyhole. With trembling hands, I inserted the tiny key from the locket. It turned with a satisfying click. The back panel of the sign shifted slightly. I carefully removed it to reveal a shallow compartment built into the sign's wooden backing. Inside was a waterproof pouch containing a thick manila envelope. Back upstairs, I spread the contents across our dining table. What Robert had hidden was astonishing. Duplicate copies of all important bakery documents, including the original will and business agreements. Detailed financial records showing the bakery's consistent profitability. A journal documenting his growing concerns about Michael and Kimberly in the year before his death. And most surprisingly, a USB drive labeled Security Backups 2016 to 2020. I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained monthly backups of the bakery's security camera footage. Robert had apparently been backing up this footage regularly without telling me. Scrolling through the files, I found dozens of clips of Michael and Kimberly in the bakery when they thought no one was watching. There they were, 6 months before Robert's death, arguing intensely in the office when they thought everyone had gone home. With the volume turned up, I could clearly hear Kimberly saying, "Your parents are sitting on a gold mine and don't even realize it. This location would be worth a fortune to developers." Another clip from just weeks before Robert fell ill showed Michael searching through file cabinets while Kimberly kept watch at the door. And most damning of all, footage from the day after Robert's funeral. Kimberly at the bakery computer, downloading financial files while saying to Michael, "We need to start making this place look unprofitable on paper. Your mother won't sell if she thinks it's still successful." I sat back, stunned by the evidence Robert had compiled. He'd suspected them all along but had never confronted them directly. Why? The answer was in his journal. "I can't break Maggie's heart by showing her what Michael has become. I'll protect what we've built another way." Robert had been preparing for this battle, even as his health failed, creating this hidden cache of evidence to protect me and the bakery if his suspicions proved correct. His final act of love had been to give me the weapons I would need to fight back. The next morning, I called Janet, Frank, and the bakery staff to my apartment. When I spread Robert's hidden evidence on the table, there were gasps of shock and then determined nods. "This changes everything," Janet said, examining the documents. "With these originals and the security footage, we have clear evidence of fraud." Frank was equally excited about the financial records. These prove definitively that the bakery has been profitable all along. Any documents showing otherwise must have been falsified. The decision I faced now was painful but clear. Using this evidence meant exposing Michael's actions publicly. It meant potentially sending my only child to jail. "I can't do that to my son," I whispered, tears threatening. Despite everything, he's still Robert's child. Alice reached across the table and covered my hand with her own weathered one. "Margaret, what would Robert want you to do?" I closed my eyes, picturing Robert's face. His kindness, his integrity, his belief in doing what was right, even when it was difficult. "He'd want me to protect the bakery," I said finally. "But he'd also want me to give Michael a chance to make things right." "Then that's what we'll do," Janet said firmly. "We'll confront Kimberly with this evidence and give Michael the opportunity to come clean and help us fix this mess. If they refuse..." She let the implication hang in the air. As our group finalized our strategy, I held Robert's journal close to my heart. "Thank you," I whispered, hoping somehow he could hear me. "You're still taking care of us. Even now." That night, I recorded a message for Michael on my phone, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "Michael, I found Dad's hidden evidence. All of it. I know everything now. But I still remember the little boy who helped me knead dough and who cried when Dad taught him to make his first perfect croissant. That boy is still part of you. I'm giving you one chance to choose which man you want to be, the one who betrayed his father's legacy or the one who helps make it right. Meet me at the bakery tomorrow at 7 a.m. if you want to be the latter. This is the only opportunity you'll get." With the message sent, I turned my attention to the final preparations for the confrontation that would determine the fate of Sullivan's family bakery. By 6 a.m. the next morning, our unlikely war council had gathered in Janet's dining room. The table was covered with documents, legal pads, and enough coffee to fuel an army. In addition to Janet, Frank, Alice, Thomas, and Deborah, we'd been joined by 3 new allies. Elena Vasquez, a loyal customer whose wedding cake we'd made 20 years ago, also happened to be a local reporter for the town newspaper. She had questioned the sudden modernization announcement and was eager to uncover the real story. Benjamin Ross, whose family had operated the printing shop next door to the bakery for 40 years, had extensive connections throughout the local business community and was already rallying support among neighboring shop owners. And perhaps most surprisingly, Caroline Weber, a former classmate of Michael's who now worked at the same bank that held our bakery loans. She had noticed unusual activity on the Sullivans' account and, concerned about potential fraud, had reached out to Janet through professional channels. "All right, let's review the plan," Janet said, calling our meeting to order. "Margaret, you'll confront Kimberly directly with the evidence, with me present as your legal counsel. Frank has prepared a complete financial analysis showing how her numbers have been manipulated." Frank nodded, pushing his glasses up his nose. "I've documented 17 distinct instances of fraudulent accounting. The bakery hasn't been losing money at all. In fact, it's been maintaining steady profitability despite the chain store competition. Meanwhile," Janet continued, "Elena will be ready with the true story for the paper, including evidence of the attempted fraud, to counter Kimberly's public narrative." Elena's journalist instincts were clearly engaged. The community deserves to know what's really happening to a beloved local institution. I've already spoken with my editor, and he's holding space for the story depending on today's outcome. Benjamin has organized a group of local business owners who will be coincidentally visiting the bakery during our confrontation, Janet added. Benjamin, a barrel-chested man with a booming voice, gave me a reassuring wink. "Nobody messes with the downtown district family. We take care of our own. And Caroline has flagged the suspicious transactions at the bank," Janet finished. "Any attempt to make further financial moves will be temporarily frozen pending investigation." The plan was solid, but a critical piece remained uncertain. "Has Michael responded to your message?" Janet asked gently. I shook my head, trying not to let disappointment show. "Not yet. I still hope." Just then, my phone chimed with a text. "Michael, I'll be there." Alone. A collective sigh of relief filled the room, though I knew better than to count on anything at this point. Michael had betrayed my trust too deeply to take his word at face value. "What about the security footage?" Thomas asked. "Are we really going to show Michael stealing his father's papers?" "That's his son," he added, pointing to a family photo on Janet's wall where a much younger Michael sat proudly on Robert's shoulders, both of them beaming. The question hit me like a physical blow. Using that footage meant publicly exposing my son's betrayal. Even if we only showed it to Kimberly as leverage, Michael would know I had concrete proof of his actions. The humiliation might break whatever fragile bond remained between us. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to protect him, even now. Robert would want to give him a chance to make things right." Janet looked at me with compassion but also clarity. "Margaret, Robert left you that evidence for a reason. He knew this day might come. And remember what you found in his journal about why he didn't confront them himself." I nodded, recalling Robert's written words. "I can't break Maggie's heart by showing her what Michael has become." Robert had been protecting me, even as his suspicions grew, but he'd also been gathering evidence, preparing for the possibility that I would need to fight this battle without him. "We'll have the footage ready," I decided. "But we'll only use it if absolutely necessary. I want to give Michael the chance to do the right thing on his own." As our group finalized last-minute details, I stepped outside onto Janet's porch for a moment alone. The early morning air was crisp, carrying the first hints of autumn. In a normal year, Robert and I would be planning our fall menu right now. Pumpkin spice rolls, apple cider donuts, maple pecan tarts. "I wish you were here," I whispered to the brightening sky. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." A gentle breeze stirred the wind chimes Robert had given Janet years ago, their melodic tones seeming to answer me. I straightened my shoulders, drawing strength from the memory of my husband's unwavering faith in me. Back inside, our team was preparing to depart for the confrontation at the bakery. But first, Janet gathered everyone in a circle. "Before we go, let's be clear about what we're fighting for," she said. "This isn't just about property or money. Sullivan's Family Bakery, represents 3 decades of Margaret and Robert's life together. It's about legacy, community, and doing what's right. Whatever happens today, we stand together. Hands joined in solidarity, we shared a moment of quiet determination before heading to the bakery for the confrontation that would determine its fate. As we arrived, I saw Michael waiting outside the front door, shoulders hunched, looking more like a scolded teenager than a successful finance professional. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, shame evident in his posture. "Remember," Janet murmured beside me as I took a deep breath and approached my son, "whatever happens in there, you're not alone." With those words of reassurance, I squared my shoulders and prepared to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The bakery looked different somehow. Only 3 days had passed since I'd been forced out, but Kimberly had already made her mark. The warm, honey-colored walls were now stark white. Our handwritten chalkboard menus had been replaced with sleek digital displays. Even the air smelled wrong, the comforting aroma of yeast and vanilla overtaken by the aggressive scent of industrial cleaner. Michael stood awkwardly by the door, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Up close, he looked terrible. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually meticulous appearance was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. "Mom," he began, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to say." "We'll talk later," I replied, more coldly than I'd intended. "Right now, we need to deal with Kimberly." As if summoned by her name, Kimberly emerged from the back office, her expression shifting rapidly from surprise to calculation when she spotted me. Unlike Michael, she looked immaculate in a tailored dress, not a hair out of place. "Margaret," she said with artificial warmth, "this is unexpected. We're actually quite busy preparing for our grand reopening this afternoon. Perhaps we could schedule a time to chat later this week?" "I think now is perfect," Janet interjected smoothly. Janet Peterson, attorney. "I believe we have some urgent business matters to discuss before your event." Kimberly's smile tightened. "Any legal matters should be directed to our corporate counsel. As I've explained to Margaret, the ownership transfer was completely legitimate. That's what we're here to discuss," I said, finding my voice. "I've found Robert's original documents, Kimberly. The real ones, not the altered versions you've been using." A flicker of unease crossed her face, quickly masked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Michael, did you know about this ambush?" Michael looked trapped, his gaze darting between his wife and me. Before he could respond, the bakery door opened, and Alice, Thomas, and Deborah entered, followed by Benjamin and several other local business owners. "What is this?" Kimberly demanded, her composure cracking slightly. "Just some community members interested in the future of Sullivan's," Benjamin replied cheerfully, though his eyes were steel. "We heard there's a grand reopening today. Thought we'd come by early to see what all the fuss is about." More customers began filtering in, their curious faces both familiar and supportive. Many had been coming to the bakery for decades. They pretended to browse the new menu while positioning themselves strategically around the space. Kimberly's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression darkening. "The investors are 10 minutes away," she hissed to Michael. "Get rid of them," she added with a gesture toward me and Janet. "Actually," Janet said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I think your investors would be very interested in what we have to discuss, particularly the evidence of fraud in your ownership claims." A collective murmur rippled through the gathering crowd. Elena, notebook in hand, had positioned herself near the front, clearly ready to document everything. "This is ridiculous," Kimberly snapped. "Michael, tell them." All eyes turned to my son. This was his moment of truth, the crossroads where he would choose his path. I held my breath, praying the man Robert and I had raised would finally emerge from behind the frightened, manipulated person he'd become. Michael straightened his shoulders and took a deep breath. "She's right, Kim. It's over. I can't do this anymore." Kimberly's face contorted with fury. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I forged documents. I lied about the bakery's finances. I betrayed my parents and everything they built. And I'm done." His voice grew stronger with each word. "Mom found Dad's evidence. All of it. The original documents, the financial records, the security footage. The bakery door chimed again as three well-dressed individuals entered: Mr. Davidson, Miss Peterson, and Mr. Torres, the investors from that fateful morning. They paused, clearly confused by the crowded scene. Kimberly recovered quickly, plastering on her professional smile. Perfect timing. We were just discussing some minor family confusion about the transition, nothing to concern ourselves with. Actually, Frank stepped forward, introducing himself as a forensic accountant. I would characterize systematic financial misrepresentation as considerably more than minor confusion. He handed copies of his analysis to the startled investors. You might want to review these before proceeding with any agreements. Mr. Torres, the legal consultant, scanned the document, his expression growing increasingly alarmed. Miss Sullivan, he addressed Kimberly, these allegations are extremely serious. If accurate, they constitute fraud. They're not accurate, Kimberly insisted, though her voice had lost its confident edge. This is just a desperate attempt by my mother-in-law to maintain control. She's elderly and confused about business matters. A ripple of indignant murmurs spread through the crowd of customers. Mrs. Garcia, who had been buying her weekly bread from us for 28 years, stepped forward. Margaret Sullivan, confused? The woman who has run this bakery for 30 years? Who remembered my grandson's peanut allergy every time I ordered his birthday cake? Who kept this place going through 3 recessions and her husband's illness? I don't think so. Others joined in with similar testimonials, their loyalty to the bakery and its true owner evident in every word. Kimberly's attempts to paint me as incompetent were being thoroughly demolished by the very community she'd hoped to win over. The investors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mr. Davidson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should postpone our discussion until these matters are clarified. There's nothing to clarify, Kimberly insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. We have signed contracts, legal documents, forged documents, Michael corrected quietly. Dad left the bakery to Mom. I helped you steal it because I was too much of a coward to tell you about my gambling debts. But I can't let you destroy everything my parents built. The bakery fell silent as Michael's confession hung in the air. Kimberly stared at him with pure hatred. You're pathetic, she spat. Your father would be ashamed of what a spineless failure you've become. Something in me snapped at her words. I stepped forward, placing myself between Kimberly and my son. Don't you dare speak about what Robert would think. You didn't know him. You didn't understand the first thing about him or this bakery or what it means to this community. I turned to address the investors directly. Sullivan's Family Bakery isn't just a business opportunity or a piece of real estate. It's 30 years of early mornings and late nights. It's 3 generations of families who've celebrated their milestones with our cakes. It's the place where my husband and I built not just a livelihood but a legacy. The passion in my voice seemed to resonate with everyone present. Even Mr. Davidson, who had spoken so dismissively of our vintage fixtures, looked somewhat chastened. Miss Davis, Miss Peterson addressed Kimberly formally. In light of these allegations and Mr. Sullivan's statement, we'll need to withdraw from our current agreements pending legal review. You can't do that. Kimberly's composed facade cracked completely. We have a deal. A deal based on fraudulent claims of ownership, Janet interjected. Legally unenforceable, I'm afraid. Mr. Torres was already packing his portfolio. We'll be in touch once we've consulted with our legal department. Good day, everyone. As the investors departed, Kimberly rounded on Michael. This is your fault. After everything I've done to fix your mistakes. Michael flinched but stood his ground. No, Kim. This was wrong from the start. I was wrong to go along with it. Kimberly looked around the room, at the witnesses to her humiliation, at the community united against her, at her husband's betrayal. Her calculated mask slipped completely, revealing the ruthless ambition beneath. You think this is over? She hissed at me. I'll drag this through every court in the state. I'll make sure everyone knows how your precious son stole from his own father. By the time I'm done, there won't be anything left of Sullivan's for anyone. Elena stepped forward, recorder in hand. Miss Davis, as a reporter for the Town Gazette, I'd like to clarify. Are you threatening to deliberately damage a beloved local business out of spite? Kimberly's eyes widened as she realized her threats had been recorded. Her gaze darted around the room, finding nothing but resolute faces. Whatever leverage she thought she had was gone. "This isn't over," she said finally, gathering her designer bag. She shot Michael a venomous glare. "I'll be calling my lawyer about divorce proceedings. Don't come home." With that, she pushed through the crowd and stormed out, the bell above the door jingling incongruously cheerful in her wake. The bakery remained silent for a long moment after her departure. Then, hesitantly, Benjamin began to applaud. Others joined in, the sound swelling until the small space rang with it, celebration and relief mingling in the air. As the impromptu ovation died down, I found myself face to face with my son. Michael's eyes were red-rimmed but clear, meeting mine directly for the first time in months. "Mom," he said, voice breaking, "I'm so sorry. For everything." I wanted to be angry. Part of me was still furious at his betrayal, at how close he'd come to destroying everything his father and I had built. But looking at him now, I also saw my little boy, the one who'd once cried inconsolably after accidentally dropping a tray of Robert's perfect croissants, devastated at having ruined something his father had created. "We have a lot to work through," I told him honestly. "Trust isn't rebuilt in a day." He nodded, accepting this truth without protest. "I know. I'll do whatever it takes, and I'll face whatever consequences come my way legally." Janet stepped up beside me. "Speaking of which, we should discuss next steps. There's still the matter of restoring proper ownership documentation, possibly pressing charges. One thing at a time," I said, suddenly feeling the weight of the past few days. I looked around at the altered bakery, at the changes Kimberly had implemented in such a short period. "First, we need to reclaim Sullivan's." Alice was already tying on her apron. "I'll start taking down these awful digital menus." Thomas headed for the kitchen. "I'll see what damage has been done back there and what we need to fix." Deborah addressed the lingering customers. "Folks, Sullivan's Family Bakery will be closed for renovation today, but we'll be back tomorrow with the real Sullivans you know and love." As our community allies and customers offered help and well wishes before departing, I found myself standing in the center of my bakery, surrounded by people who cared about this place almost as much as I did. The battle wasn't completely over yet, but in this moment, I knew with absolute certainty that Sullivan's would survive. Michael approached cautiously, sleeves already rolled up. "Where do you want me to start, Mom?" I pointed to the pristine white walls. "Find the honey-colored paint in the storage room. Let's bring back the warmth to this place." Together, we began the work of restoration. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and rebuilding. Janet and her legal team worked tirelessly to restore proper ownership of the bakery to me, a process complicated by the web of fraudulent documents Michael and Kimberly had created. Though painful, Michael's full confession and cooperation proved invaluable in untangling the mess. "The good news," Janet explained one afternoon as we reviewed yet another stack of legal documents in the bakery's back office, "is that with Michael's testimony and the evidence Robert left, we have a clear case. The court has already issued a preliminary ruling restoring your ownership rights." "And the bad news?" I asked, sensing there was more. Janet sighed. "Kimberly is contesting everything, as she threatened, and there's the matter of potential criminal charges against Michael." My heart sank. Despite everything, he was still my son. "What are we looking at?" "Forgery, fraud, possibly elder financial abuse," Janet said gently. "However, given his cooperation and the fact that he came forward voluntarily before any charges were filed, there's room for leniency." Michael had been staying in the small guest room above the bakery, separate from my apartment but close enough that we were gradually re-establishing some semblance of a relationship. Each morning, he joined me in the kitchen at 4 a.m., silently taking on the most menial tasks without complaint. He hadn't baked alongside me since he was a teenager, and his skills were rusty, but his willingness to learn again touched something deep in my heart. One morning, I found him staring at his father's photo on the wall, tears streaming down his face. "I keep thinking about how disappointed he would be," Michael said when he realized I was watching. "He trusted me to protect you and the bakery, and I betrayed that trust completely." I joined him by the photo, studying Robert's kind eyes and gentle smile. "Your father believed in redemption, Michael. He believed people could change if they truly wanted to. Do you think I can?" he asked, vulnerability raw in his voice. "Change, I mean." I think you already have, I said truthfully. The real question is whether you can sustain it. That afternoon, Michael attended his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting in the church basement 2 blocks from the bakery. It was one of many steps on his long road to recovery, both from his addiction and from the moral compromises it had led him to make. Meanwhile, the bakery itself was undergoing its own healing process. We stripped away the cold, corporate changes Kimberly had implemented and restored the warm, homey atmosphere our customers had loved for decades. The digital menus came down, replaced by our traditional chalkboards. The industrial furniture was sold, and our mismatched wooden tables and chairs returned from storage. Most importantly, the heart of Sullivan's, the recipes and techniques Robert and I had perfected over 30 years, resumed their rightful place. The kitchen once again filled with the scent of proper sourdough fermentation, butter-rich pastry, and the secret vanilla-cinnamon blend Robert had created for our signature morning buns. Our loyal customers returned in droves, many bringing friends and family to show support. Elena's article in the Town Gazette had told the true story of Kimberly's attempted takeover and the community's role in saving a local institution. The response had been overwhelmingly positive, with many readers expressing outrage at the scheme and relief that Sullivan's would continue under its original ownership. The financial aspect proved more challenging. Frank's investigation revealed that Michael and Kimberly had indeed siphoned significant funds from the bakery over the previous months. Additionally, the brief modernization period had been expensive, with contractors and suppliers paid premium rates for rush work. We're solvent, Frank explained after completing his audit, but with little margin for error. You'll need to be careful with expenses for the next 6 to 8 months. This reality led to some difficult conversations. Thomas, Alice, Deborah, and I agreed to reduced salaries temporarily. Michael insisted on working without pay indefinitely, using his finance skills to implement cost-saving measures that wouldn't compromise quality. Despite these challenges, there was a renewed energy in the bakery. We weren't just maintaining what had been, we were actively building something stronger. Thomas suggested offering baking classes on Sunday evenings when the bakery was closed. Deborah reorganized our ordering system to reduce waste. Alice created a Sullivan's Legacy wall where customers could share photos and stories of their history with the bakery. As for Kimberly, her threats of prolonged legal warfare gradually lost steam as the evidence against her mounted. Her reputation in the business community was irreparably damaged by the scandal. The divorce proceedings moved forward, with Michael making no claims on their joint assets beyond his personal belongings. She can have it all, he told me when I questioned this decision. The condo, the cars, the investments. It was all built on lies anyway, just like our marriage. The most painful part of the reconciliation process was Michael finally revealing the full extent of his gambling addiction and how Kimberly had used it to control him. It had started innocently enough with friendly poker games at his investment firm, then escalated to sports betting, and finally to high-stakes online gambling that consumed him day and night. When Kimberly discovered how much I'd lost, she was furious. He explained during one of our late-night talks in the bakery kitchen. But then she saw an opportunity. She told me she could fix everything if I helped her acquire the bakery. She convinced me the property alone was worth millions to developers. That you'd never need to know the truth about my addiction. Why didn't you come to me? I asked. The question that had haunted me for months. Your father and I would have helped you. Michael's eyes filled with shame. I couldn't bear for Dad to know what a failure I'd become. His successful son, the finance expert, secretly drowning in gambling debt. And after he died, I just couldn't add to your grief. Gradually, these painful conversations began to heal the breach between us. Michael's counselor suggested family therapy sessions, which helped us address years of unspoken expectations and disappointments. I learned that Michael had felt enormous pressure to live up to Robert's vision for him, even as he pursued his own path. Michael came to understand how deeply his betrayal had wounded me, beyond the practical matter of the bakery ownership. 6 months after the confrontation with Kimberly, we received the final court judgment. Sullivan's Family Bakery was legally restored to my full ownership, with all fraudulent transfers nullified. The district attorney, considering Michael's cooperation and ongoing rehabilitation, agreed to a plea deal involving probation, community service, and restitution rather than jail time. That evening, I invited the entire staff to my apartment for dinner to celebrate. As we gathered around the table Robert and I had shared for so many years, I looked at these people who had stood by me through the darkest period of my life. Janet with her legal brilliance, Frank with his meticulous financial mind, Thomas, Alice, and Deborah with their unwavering loyalty, and Michael, still fragile but finding his way back to himself. "Before we eat," I said, raising my glass, "I want to thank all of you. 6 months ago, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But you helped me fight for it, and in the process, I gained something even more valuable, an understanding of what Sullivan's truly means. It's not just a business or even a legacy. It's a community, it's family, both born and chosen." I turned to Michael, seeing both his pain and his progress. "Robert would be proud of the work we've done to rebuild, all of us. And he would be especially proud of you, Michael, for finding the courage to face your mistakes and begin again." Michael's eyes glistened with tears as he raised his glass of sparkling cider, now 8 months sober. "To Dad," he said softly, "and to Sullivan's. May they both continue to inspire us to be better than we thought we could be." As our glasses clinked together, I felt Robert's presence among us, his spirit woven into the very fabric of the home and business we'd created together. The road ahead would still have challenges, but we would face them as a family rebuilt, stronger at the broken places. 1 year to the day after the alarm had jolted me awake at 5 a.m., I stood in Sullivan's kitchen in the pre-dawn darkness, watching the first rays of sunlight peek through the windows. So much had changed in 12 months. Yet the essential rhythm of the bakery remained the same. The gentle hum of the proofing cabinets, the comforting weight of dough beneath my hands, the anticipation of another day serving our community. Sullivan's Family Bakery had not just survived, it had thrived. Our careful financial management had paid off, allowing us to fully restore staff salaries and even add 2 part-time positions. The modernization fiasco had actually brought us valuable publicity, and our customer base had grown as people from neighboring towns made special trips to visit the bakery with the dramatic backstory. We had made some thoughtful updates. Our website now featured online ordering for special occasions. We'd expanded our gluten-free and vegan options to accommodate changing dietary needs. A small coffee bar in the corner offered locally roasted beans. But these changes had been implemented slowly, with respect for our traditions and in response to genuine customer requests rather than trendy marketing schemes. The door from the staircase opened, and Michael entered the kitchen, already wearing his apron. At 37, he now looked more like Robert than ever, especially since he'd started growing a beard similar to his father's. After completing his probation and therapy requirements, he had officially joined the bakery staff 6 months ago, slowly earning back trust and learning the business from the ground up. "Morning, Mom," he said, washing his hands at the sink. "Sourdough's looking good today. Nice rise overnight." I smiled, remembering how Robert used to greet the starter the same way each morning, like an old friend who'd done good work. Michael had taken over managing our sourdough, treating the century-old starter with the reverence it deserved. His financial background had proven unexpectedly valuable in the bakery operations, bringing a level of organization and efficiency to our ordering and inventory that Robert would have appreciated. The security system beeped softly as Alice entered using her own code, followed shortly by Thomas. Our new alarm system was state-of-the-art, professionally installed and maintained, with separate access codes for each staff member. Like many aspects of the bakery, our security had been strengthened through the crisis, protecting much more than just the building. As we moved through our morning routine, the practiced dance of bakers who know each rhythm and cue by heart, I marveled at how much healing a year could bring. Kimberly was long gone, having moved to Chicago after the divorce was finalized. According to Michael, she had rebranded herself and was working for a marketing firm there. The Sullivan's incident conspicuously absent from her professional biography. The legal consequences had been significant, but not devastating. Michael's plea agreement had required full restitution, community service, and 2 years probation. He attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice weekly, sponsored newcomers to the program, and had voluntarily placed himself under financial guardianship until his counselor deemed him ready to manage his own money again. Our relationship had been rebuilt slowly, painfully, but with genuine effort on both sides. There were still moments when the betrayal resurfaced, when trust wavered. But we had learned to address these feelings directly rather than letting them fester. At 7 a.m., As the first batch of morning pastries emerged golden and fragrant from the ovens, Deborah arrived to set up the front counter, along with our 2 new part-time employees, college students who were learning the baking trade between classes. I had begun a formal apprenticeship program, passing on the techniques and recipes Robert and I had perfected over the decades. 3 serious students now attended weekend master classes, ensuring that our traditions would continue even after I eventually stepped back. That was another change the past year had brought. A clear vision for succession planning. I was 68 now, still energetic and passionate about the bakery, but aware that I wouldn't work 18-hour days forever. A gradual transition had begun, with Deborah taking on more management responsibilities and Thomas heading product development. Michael's role in this future remained uncertain. He worked diligently but made no assumptions about eventual ownership. "I need to earn back the right to even be considered," he had said when I broached the subject. "And honestly, Mom, I'm not sure I'm the best person to lead Sullivan's. Dad always saw me in that role, but maybe he was wrong." His humility was new, a product of hard lessons learned. Whatever role Michael ultimately played in the bakery's future, I knew he now understood the true value of what Robert and I had built, something that couldn't be measured in property values or profit margins. At 7:30 a.m., I unlocked the front door, turning the sign to open, just as I had done thousands of mornings before. The first customers were already waiting: Mrs. Garcia for her weekly bread order, Mr. Peterson for his daily coffee and scone, young parents with sleepy children seeking breakfast treats before school. "Good morning, Margaret," they greeted me. These neighbors who had stood with me during the darkest days. "Everything smells wonderful, as always." As I served them with flour-dusted hands and a full heart, I caught sight of Robert's photograph on the wall. In the morning light, his smile seemed especially warm, as if he approved of everything he saw. The security alarm that had awakened me exactly 1 year ago had been Kimberly's attempt to catch me at my most vulnerable. Instead, it had become the wake-up call that saved everything that mattered. In trying to steal our legacy, she had inadvertently strengthened it, bringing together the community and family bonds that were Sullivan's true foundation. At exactly 5 a.m., Michael and I now stood side by side at the work table, shaping dough for the day's first baking. No alarms, no surprises, just the peaceful rhythm of continuing the work Robert and I had begun 3 decades earlier. In that quiet moment of creation, I felt more certain than ever that some legacies are simply too powerful to be stolen, especially when protected by love, truth, and a community that recognizes their value. If my story has taught me anything, it's that family betrayal can either break you or make you stronger. In my case, it revealed just how many people were truly family beyond blood ties. I'd love to hear your thoughts on protecting what matters most to you. Has someone ever tried to take something precious from you? How did you fight back? If this story resonated with you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more true family stories. Share your experiences in the comments below, and remember that sometimes the most important ingredient in any recipe for healing is truth served with a side of forgiveness. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to rebuilding. Until next time, this is Margaret Sullivan, still baking and still believing in second chances.